seconds.
Good morning, Wednesday, April 29th, 2026. Sorry we missed you yesterday on floor section. We are continuing on trying to end our year by working on language on some bills. Our hopes has been to vote about everything out this week. We're going to still try to do that, but we don't have a absolutely positively demanding that we do that. We'll do it as we are comfortable as a committee, which we'll talk throughout the day about where we stand with that. We're going to spend some time with our ledge counsel, Attorney Shulman, who we kept up late hours of the night. I always kind of giggle when I see these emails coming through. He works late hours. And welcome, sir. The floor is yours.
Okay, Bradley Shulman, Office of Legislative Counsel. And so I have 3 amendments that are up today. And does the committee have a preference for order?
I think we have Paraquat first on the bill, so
Okay.
we could do that one, if that
great.
works for you.
That sounds great. So the Paraquat amendment has not changed since last week. And I will pull it up and share my screen. Great. So the Paraquat amendment has not changed. If the committee does vote on this today, I'll send a clean copy because this copy still has the highlights that we discussed last week. So my apologies on that. But what this amendment does is it strips out the purpose section and the study in the House bill. And then it adds in as a authorized exception, growing any crop listed in the berry category from the USDA, the berry and small fruit crops. So it would be your berries and your strawberries in there to be able to have seek a permit to continue to use Paraquat. And that's the bill, or the amendment, I should say.
I have looked at it. Everybody looked at this bill. Everybody happy with this bill? Any changes to do?
Just looking over on page 2 at the bottom. Permit conditions minimize drift based on drift.
Yeah, that last was what I was wanting to make sure.
We want to vote it out, or do we want to, what do you want to do?
I go with that. Yeah, you go.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, then I'll have the clerk, list it. Yeah, there we go. You.
All right, so voting on H739. Draft 1.1.
Yes.
Yep.
It is with amendment because it's a straight up
Okay, 1.1. Yep.
With an amendment.
favorable with amendment. I think there's a thing you just circle.
Yeah, it's
Yeah, okay.
Well, I got clerk color roll.
All right, Senator Colmar,
Yes.
Senator Heffernan, yes. Senator Majors,
yes.
Senator Plunkett,
Yes.
Senator Ingalls.
Yes.
All right, our vote is 6-0-0. 5-0-0.
Sorry, that's another.
I was counting Steve. Who's reporting?
I'll report it.
Yeah. Ranger wants to report that one.
I'll give you some notes too if you want.
Okay, yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay,
I was gonna volunteer.
congratulations on that. That was a lot of compromise going on within the committee. as I was, Senator Major and I were talking, Senator Major's gonna report this bill for anybody who might be listening. We're happy about that. This bill could have gone a lot of different ways. It certainly could have hung on a wall. I think in a lot of committees, there was some pressure to do that. Not how we roll. We could have certainly, I think, had enough votes at the end of the day to not vote to ban. And at the end of the day, we compromised and came together as a committee, and I'm very happy about that. So congratulations, Sean, you guys work on that. Very proud of that. Next, sir.
All right, next up on the agenda is House Bill 941, an amendment to House Bill 941. And this would be the municipal regulation of agriculture. There. And so I have highlighted some changes since last time we spoke. This first change is just some language in the purpose section. And the content hasn't changed, just some wording changed. The purpose section, farming livestock requires an adequate land base that raising livestock on small parcels in densely populated areas may create unique concerns. And as for all, municipalities may regulate livestock on farms that do not have at least one contiguous acre of land. Other farming activities subject to regulation by the RAPS on less than one contiguous acre remain exempt from municipal zoning. So otherwise that has not changed. And so the first substantive change, after some discussion among legislative council, on page 3, you'll remember that the Secretary of Ag, or the Agency of Agriculture, has
You could keep going. We are draft 1.1, right?
Yes, that is correct.
But I am pulling up this draft 1.2. Oh. So Linda, I think the draft, it's 941.
It is the House Bill 941, draft 4.1.
Keep the wrong one.
Yeah.
Along with 1 to 2. We'll have Linda take a peek at it. And we'll just, let's concentrate on the screen then, because Bradley's got the right one on the screen.
Yeah. I'm just gonna double check Linda to make sure what I sent you. Yeah, what I sent you last night, Linda, was 4.1. And so, so what we have here, so you remember with the RAPS, I'm just going to scroll to the RAPS section just as a reminder of why I moved something from the RAPS to the statute. And so the RAPS, where this is section 3, it's amending the RAPS here. And there's these 2 caveats that kind of are some subtle but significant changes to how the RAPS work and how something is required to be regulated by the required agricultural practices. So we'll start with number 2. Number 2 is already in statute. This is the less than one contiguous acre subject to the applicable, the raising, feeding, or managing livestock on a farm with less than one contiguous acre is subject to applicable municipal zoning bylaws, even when a person's engaged in other farming activities subject to the rule, right? So that's what this amendment has already put into statute. We considered putting this piece into statute as well, and the draft language does that. On at least 1 and less than 4 contiguous acres shall meet the requirements of subdivision C5 of this section to be exempt from regulation by municipal zoning bylaws. And C5 of this section is, we'll scroll down. C5 of this section requires that farming, raising, feeding, or managing livestock on a farm of less than 1 contiguous acre, at least 1 contiguous acre and less than 4 contiguous acres, and has a sufficient land base for appropriate nutrient waste management. And so to be regulated by the RAPS, if you're raising, feeding, or managing livestock on 1 to 4 acres, you need to have a sufficient land base for appropriate nutrient management as determined by the Secretary of Agriculture. So we put that piece in statute. It doesn't have to be in statute. It's the clearest in statute in terms of instructions to the community, but it is a policy choice whether you want it in statute or you want it to be in rule. This notwithstanding clause is notwithstanding C, which is the raising of poultry. Raising, feeding, or managing a small backyard poultry flock. So it's notwithstanding subsection C of the subdivision 1, that the raising, feeding, or managing of livestock on a farm of at least 1 contiguous acre and less than 4 contiguous acres shall have a sufficient land base for appropriate nutrient waste management as determined by Secretary of Agriculture and Food and Markets, be exempt from regulation by municipal zoning bylaws. And so this piece is put up into statute. And we wanted to flag that for the committee about that.
Ready?
Is that already in the wraps?
It is in the proposed amendments now.
So it's belts and suspenders kind of?
It's putting it into statute means that the agency of agriculture could not change it by rulemaking. And it also it's a belt and suspenders approach, but it also tries to clarify the intent to potentially avoid another TAF Street situation.
Okay.
Where it's unclear. And we're trying to be mindful of that clarity that the Supreme Court's asking of us here.
I like it.
It's on your website now. It's the second one without a date on it.
What's our lawyer? That's an hour. That's a human following.
Go ahead.
I agree with Frank.
You agree with?
Right, it's better to have those standards, it's clear for any sort of judicial review.
One point two. Now. Okay.
Ready? Okay. Want to make sure everybody's. Everybody need clarification?
No, so the one thing that I did learn in the past minute is the term belt and suspenders, but I appreciate that.
Oh. I agree with that.
Here's a firefighter in this first one.
And my pants fell down all the.
It wasn't a pretty sight. So maybe I wasn't there.
I'm going to.
I wasn't
use that.
there. I wasn't there.
No, that's okay, but I'm going to use that phrase. I appreciate that.
Okay, and the rest of these changes are some changes we discussed the committee discussed last week that I added in. And so now we're looking at or page 3, line 14. And this is an exemption that will permit municipalities to regulate swine waste in downtowns or village centers. And so we added some clarification language as highlighted. Municipalities shall not prohibit swine or swine waste or regulates swine waste related farm structures on a farm subject to the applicable. And so this takes out the possibility that towns could submit a performance standard saying that you just can't have swine waste, right? And adds that level of clarification there. We added municipalities may set a performance standard related to swine waste pursuant to section 4414 of this title to reasonably, adding the word reasonably regulate swine waste in downtowns or village centers if the waste is causing a significant adverse impact to the community and the municipality has determined that the Secretary of Agriculture, Food and Markets is unable to provide redress through application of the RAPS rule. a performance standard shall not have the effect of prohibiting swine or swine waste in a municipality. And so, we're adding the reasonably term so that, if there's a conflict and people want to engage in that conflict, they can find what reasonably is, through an appeals process or through engagement with the town or secretary of agriculture. So it doesn't purport to put in statute rules about how to do manure or how to regulate those kinds of things. It kind of leaves that up there, but the term reasonably does put some parameters, at least some parameters, in addition to saying that municipalities can't prohibit swine waste entirely. And this standard and this language down here, performance standard shall not have the effect of prohibiting swine or swine waste in a municipality. And so that's further light parameters, but there's still parameters that a municipality would have to work into when regulating swine waste in a downtown or village center.
Ready?
Decided.
And then if it is determined reasonably, they have 30 days to
Yeah.
fix something.
So, and the next subsection does say municipalities have at least 30 days, shall provide at least 30 days notice with opportunity to cure. So we added that in just to clarify to the secretary and the farm prior to enforcing a performance standard related to swine waste. And then, I think this notwithstanding clause was in there previously, but notwithstanding any of the provisions of laws to the contrary, for purposes of this section, swine waste includes animal manure and absorbent bedding of the animal, because there are other provisions in law saying that municipalities cannot regulate animal manure or the absorbent bedding of the animal. So this notwithstanding clause would prevent that and just kind of take out that potential problem. Again, so section B. So we're moving away from swine waste into the cultivation of plants. And so we changed the language to mirror what the Agency of Agriculture initially put in, which is cannabis is separately regulated and is excluded from this exception. So municipalities cannot regulate the cultivation or use of land for growing plants, including those kinds of plants. And it just calls out that cannabis is not included in this specific exception. Cannabis is, there are other statutes where cannabis enjoys a similar exception that other farming activity subject to the RAPS rule would enjoy. But this language specifies that you don't get this additional protection about growing plants for food. And the food and other items. Moving on, just scrolling to page 6. And then this is just some conforming language changes. This is in the RAPS on page 7. And so when we added these two caveats to the RAPS about farm raising, feeding, or managing livestock on 1 to 4 acres and on less than 1 acre, we added that caveat to the, it's not a preamble, it's like the introductory paragraph of this section of the RAPS that tells you what kind of farming activity is subject to the RAPS. So we added these two caveats in the introductory paragraph. And in doing that, it changed all the formatting of this section. And so we just added language here that just meant to conform and meant to account for the formatting unless otherwise stated. Compliance with required agricultural practices is required if a person meets one of the following requirements. And then it goes on to the requirements that you're familiar with, the $2,000 threshold, you're farming on no less than 4 contiguous acres, things of that sort. This is just conforming language just to make sure that we're clarifying for the public that you meet any one of these criteria unless otherwise stated in those preamble pieces. You meet any one of these criteria, you are subject to the RAPS. And there are no other changes since we discussed about this last week. I did add an effective date of July 1st, 2026. The committee's welcome to make this effective on passage or any other date. But we put in the effective date, the default effective date here.
Ready? We're good?
Yeah.
Effective date, okay, July 1st. Ministry of Agriculture.
Morning, Steve Collard from the Native Agriculture. I think effective on passage is maybe better, but I don't think it's that important. I don't think no municipalities are going to be adopting bylaws between now and then. I don't believe with this coming.
Are we ready for a vote? Yep, let's vote it out.
I'll fill in the current draft.
So we're voting on H 941,
Mm-hmm.
miscellaneous agricultural bill.
Correct.
Yeah, 4.1.
Senator Calhoun,
Yes.
Senator Heffernan, yes. Senator Majors,
Yes.
Senator Pompey,
Yes.
Senator Ingalls.
Yes.
5-0-0. Then Count Stevens.
I'll report it.
And Linda, I'll send you a clean version when you get back to my office.
Congratulations, a lot of hard work.
I think it wasn't the
Yeah.
miscellaneous ag bill, it was actually the full regulation of agriculture.
All right, I'll see. Put the heading on it. Thank you.
The other one.
Correct. Yeah, the other one is the equestrian.
Bradley, you good for the next one?
Yes, I am. Yes, I am. House Bill 942. This is the miscellaneous agricultural subjects, and it's draft 3.1.
No, I'm gonna apologize to you. Hold on. Okay, this is 3.1, we're adding equine. We were actually gonna add some tax exempt status on logs equipment, Brad. I didn't get that to you.
Okay, okay.
Fine, I'll get you the language on that.
Yep.
I do apologize very much.
That's no problem. Happy to.
Do you have any of that language? You remember seeing any of that language, Linda? Do we have that language someplace? That would have been sent by, Mr. Doran.
Mr. Who, please?
Dana Doran.
I don't believe I've seen
We had it one time.
that. Okay.
So I'm looking at draft 3.1, the only proposed change is the word and.
Oh,
Yes,
no.
I guess they sent some bill language after that. Yeah, it might have been the latest email or one of the latest emails that we've had from them.
I still have it, I might have ruined but
Got it.
Have you found it? Can you ship that to us, to Bradley, please?
And so with this bill, there's currently 2 instances of amendment.
Oh.
The first instant of amendment is about equine farming that I made no changes to from last week.
Okay.
The second instance of amendment is on the bottom of page 3. And so this is completely new. And Senator Collmore, I highlighted the word and I was going to highlight everything else that was changed, but then it's just a giant yellow block.
Okay.
But then I didn't unhighlight the and. So this is language from About Ready, Rural Economic Development Initiative. And this language was proposed to the committee by Ready last week. And I was asked to add their language in. And I do have some questions for committee discussion. And so I did have a discussion with some folks over at Ready about this language and trying to get some clarity here. And so this would add in community development initiatives to mean projects located throughout the state that support agriculture, historic preservation, outdoor recreation, and other critical economic development needs that may be supported when state resources or staffing assistance is not available. And then it goes on to say, Ready, the Rural Economic Development Initiative, is administered by the Vermont Housing Conservation Board for the purpose of promoting and facilitating community economic development in small towns and rural areas in the state and supporting community development initiatives. So let's look at the language on 3 and line 8. So my questions when I was reviewing this language is, does this apply to urban and rural areas? And because the language that is listed here, it does apply to urban areas in addition to rural areas, and Ready did confirm that. And so I just want to make sure that that is the intent of the committee, is for urban areas, even urban municipalities to be able to apply for this assistance.
My intent with this language would be, and I want the committee to obviously weigh in on what their thought process is as well, is to do with what Ready's been doing all along, with the one change that they wanted to get rid of the 5,000 person threshold so that they could make a determination of these larger communities using this policies and strategies that they've done. That they would just be able to go into those communities where they're not able to go in now.
Okay.
Hope that.
Okay.
I'm not trying to change the way they do business, just allow them to be into those areas where they were, where they're excluded by that limit of 5,000 people. But we have people in the room as well.
So for the record, I'm Polly Major, I'm the policy director for the Vermont Housing Conservation Board, and Liz Gleason, who administers the Ready program, is the director of our Farm Forest Viability Program. And thank you, Chair. As you say, our intent here is to ensure that we can provide this really flexible funding, which essentially provides grant writing support to working lands businesses and community development projects like a small municipality that might be looking to draw down federal funds for a water and wastewater program, for example. And right now it is targeted, and the intent of the program is to target rural areas that have less technical capacity. We will not change that. Our rules governing the program will continue to prioritize rural areas, but there are certain instances where you might have a farm that's located in a larger municipality that still doesn't have the grant writing capacity to pull down a federal grant. We want to help that farm. Or you might have an instance like a merger between two municipalities like Linden and Lindenville that push that rural town over the limit. We want to continue to help projects there. So that's the flexibility that we're seeking here.
Great, Sean.
And so, and I think that this language achieves that goal. However, I do have some questions. So I just wanted to confirm the committee that it's as written, number 3 does permit throughout the state, right? And so that means Rutland, Bennington, Burlington, and so long as the committee understands that is perfectly fine. It preserves the $5,000 population threshold, because I think the goal of Ready is still to focus on those small towns. And so I just want to get rid of the threshold as much as give themselves some flexibility. And I think that this language accomplishes that goal.
So you said $5,000, I think that.
People, right? Sorry. Sorry. Thank you.
Comment too.
Well, just a question. The language looks like exactly what you had forwarded to us at some point. So I think we've already seen it. I thought there was a but coming from the council.
There is.
Okay.
And so, and I think the committee discussed this a little bit last week too, but highlighting the other critical economic development needs, and what does that mean? And so the issue that we chatted about yesterday when I was discussing with Liz and Pauline, that what we want to try and avoid is having these community development initiative projects be able to be eligible for funding for different types of programs that the rural and small towns are not eligible for. And so when you have language saying other critical economic development needs, the question becomes, are you broadening not only the geographic scope, but also the programmatic scope of what is eligible for funding. And I flag that because we scroll down and we're on E in the bottom of page 5. This is language that's already in the statute, but we have these priority projects. And so Ready shall develop and seek assistance in the following types of priority projects. And it lists the priority projects: outdoor recreation, value-added food, farm operations, things that we're familiar with. And then I took out, there's a collaboration section, a reporting section that I omitted here. But these are the priority project lists. And so there's one reading of the statute saying that this is an exclusive list of things that Ready can fund. And there's one reading of statute that that's an inclusive list. And so if it's an exclusive list, that means that rural and small towns can only get projects in those funding priorities. And that the community development initiatives could get other critical economic development needs throughout the state. So it might create kind of a little bit of an imbalance there. And so the proposal would be community development issues needs priority projects located throughout the state. And because priority projects is already defined in the statute, we're just kind of borrowing that language. And so we could omit support these things, which is what the priority projects is, and just leave it at that. So having refer to the language in the statute that's already there to say these are the kinds of priorities. And another recommendation that we were discussing would be because Ready has indicated that they might think of this as an inclusive list or an inclusive list, so that they could fund other priority projects outside of that list. And if the committee wanted to clarify that in statute, we can add just an including language here to permit them in statute to do that, which might be what they're doing in practice.
Can we hear from my cousin over there? What types of funding were the organization looking for?
So I'm actually,
Other economic.
I'm gonna turn it over to.
I couldn't quite hear
Liz.
you. Can you say that again?
What other economic initiatives
Yeah.
were we thinking of?
Yeah, so we have been perceiving this as an inclusive list. And some of the other examples, I'm looking through the last couple of years of projects. I think water and wastewater infrastructure is a great example because for particularly really small towns, those projects can just be so complex to develop. And they enable such a wide variety of economic development to happen once you have that. So I think that's a really solid example. And the most consistent thing. We also get people who are wanting to develop like community centers that might be a host site for like recreational activities, town activities, co-working spaces, etc. A lot of those are in historic buildings, so they're already fit the priority areas, but some of them are not.
What I think would probably be good, to the councilor's point, is to get a little bit more specific in what these are.
Yeah.
And then, so we're not venturing into other things that.
I just want to make sure that we're not taking a program that is meant for the rural folk and then diluting the funding sources for these larger projects. And I'm not saying that it's going to be done by the committee of or the group of, I'm saying it's going to be done by the voting group that's representing those larger communities that can come in and demand that you do something. That's what I'm nervous about. I fully understand the value of what you folks are doing, and it's a huge value. I don't want to lose that value. I don't want to lose the exclusivity of what you're doing. I don't want to have you are starting to feel the political pressure from these larger groups. Let's face it, Chittenden County coming in because they had 6 senators and saying, well, listen, no, this is what we really want you to do. I'd like you to have protections in there so that can't happen. I hope that makes sense to a lot of people.
It certainly does, and I think there's kind of 2 ways to do those protections. One is in our programmatic rules and how we're administering the program, understanding that the intent is for those small rural communities. And that's why I think leaving in the threshold of 5,000 as a signifier is that is the primary goal of this program is really important. The other thing you could do to put a guardrail around these resources to ensure that the vast majority continue to flow to those really small towns is put a percentage and say up to 10% could go to these rural community development initiatives so we can serve that farm in Colchester, but the vast majority, 90%, would be going to those smaller towns.
I also see, and I like that, and I want to be careful, because here's the other side that I see. I also see the missing middle of where your involvement could become pretty significant for these communities that are on the edge where somebody else isn't going to not want to participate with them, where you folks could, because it's just over the line. So, I have enough respect for what you guys have done. Gus is God. And I have enough respect for how you guys have administered and done and all that stuff. So I don't want to make it so I just want to protect that rural aspect of it, but I also understand the branching out. You folks have some great funding. You have some abilities to pull down other grant dollars. I want to give you that opportunity. I think you've earned every bit of what you've done. The strength that you bring to communities is, to me, very powerful. So I do agree with expanding it with some guardrails in place. So whatever language that we can get to that protects the middle, I like the percentage of it. And if that's not enough, then, I want to make sure that we're just not going to make a decision today. If we can make a decision today, great. But if it takes a few more days to make sure that we get the language right, I'd rather do that.
Well, I really appreciate that. I will maybe pass along to Gus that he's gone, although I might have that back. But I'll say that as we were discussing with Mr. Sherman yesterday, the language we really liked his proposal of add and including to the priority project list to ensure that it's not an exhaustive list, and then cite that in the rural community development definition. So we're not allowing more types of projects to be funded in those larger communities than in the rural communities. So there's parity between the two. And then we're certainly open to adding a threshold if that would give the committee some comfort that this is still going to be targeted. But Liz can also share kind of how programmatically we're targeting this towards rural communities.
Yeah, I think for us, the last part, like line 11 of the new number 3 was really important and was sort of our initial take on how to make sure that this was not like supplanting work that larger municipalities it's really within their wheelhouse and their job to provide to their communities. Like, I don't think we want this, and whether this is said in the statute or is within our program policy, like, I don't think we're talking about supporting grant writing for Burlington to improve their wastewater. I think we are talking about, like, there's farms in Burlington and South Burlington and Colchester and a lot of those bigger towns that are not going to have access to municipal or other technical support. So that's kind of like, when we first took a crack at this, we were like, shouldn't just be for farms, but there are projects coming to us that we can't always anticipate that do bump up against a lack of resources. So we were like, let's try something.
And I want you to be able to get into that field and that playing field. And I do hear you and trust you when you say that's not our intent. But again, I know how political pressure works, and I want some guardrails in there to keep you from saying, hey, we'd like to do that, but we can't. But I want it to be in language that you can agree with and that you can live with and that you're happy with, and that we're not coming in micromanaging what you want to do. I like your involvement into these other projects. I really do. I do see that you are going to be into areas that other people aren't paying attention to. That's important to me. I'd like to make sure that we do one of two things. We say, yeah, we're fine with language here today, or we're gonna take a day or two or whatever it takes to work with your group and Attorney Shulman and get some language in there that when you come back, everybody's nodding their head in the right direction, including us. Is that okay?
That'll work. We really appreciate the attention.
So just trying to get a hold of the two things. The first one is maybe it's just me. I'm hesitating about a 10% threshold, because what if it's 11%?
Right.
As soon as you put a number on something, especially in statute, you automatically take other people out. So that's just.
Well, and I agree with it.
It's 10.
I agree with that, because there could be some great projects that you guys could get involved with. And the reason why I want you involved with them is because of your track record of what you've done in the past. And if it's a good project, it's a good project, it's a good project. And, but also, yeah, I want to find that compromise of where that's at. I apologize.
No, you don't apologize. I just.
I jumped in on what you said.
It was just how I thought about stuff. So I don't know whether it makes any more sense to take line 8, means projects located throughout the state that support agriculture, historic preservation, outdoor recreation, other, regardless of where those needs are identified or something like that. I don't think you should monkey with the 5,000 either, because what if it's, 40,000 people and, I don't want to, as the chair said, divert resources that would otherwise help small towns out. So I'm just suggesting that there's maybe a better way to phrase other critical economic development needs that may be supported, et cetera, et cetera. Geography's got to sort of be part of that, I think, versus population. If we focus really exclusively on the rural parts of this, I mean, if it's a farm in Burlington, I still consider that rural, even though almost by definition it can't be. If you sort of understand what I'm saying, it really is, because you're not talking about apartment buildings, you're talking about a farm. So maybe some more work could be done there. And then the on line 16 on page 5 is where we identify which projects but not limited to, or something like that, even make it more precise that we're not talking about just milk plants, milk candlers, dairy products, and all that kind of stuff. That if there is a town, a municipality that's got 5,001 people, but they're really desperate for a stormwater facility, that should be part of what could be considered. And I think the chair is right. It's obvious from the work you've done here. Your orientation is, according to this committee, correct. It's to help those small or rural areas that otherwise don't get a lot of attention. But you don't want to leave out some municipality that's just a little bit bigger, but have an equal, or should have an equal amount of opportunity there. So that's the one.
I think we're gonna have to trust them to decide.
I'm willing to do
And
that.
have that determination. They continue to do good work, and they will continue to, and hopefully continue to do good work and decide what municipalities, because they've said a couple of municipalities that just outside, but we want to give them. So I'm going to give them the benefit of that.
The jumping off a couple of what's Senator Palmer, Senator Major mentioned. So I don't know what the definition of rural area is. It's defined in here. But just looking at what we have is we add to the purpose of READY.
Where are you, Senator?
This is page 4, starts at line 12 or 16. That defines the purpose. It includes supporting community development issues. 16 through 21 then say what READY will do, which is shall collaborate with things to access funding and other assistance available to small towns and businesses in even rural areas of the state. So that limits it to rural areas of the state for small towns and businesses. And then later on, it says services, Ready shall provide the following services to small towns and businesses in rural areas. So although we define the
Does rural have a definition without using 5,000?
The census designates rural and urban areas, so Bennington is an urban area, by census designations. I can't recall the specific number of amounts. But they do designate.
Okay.
I think 20 and 21 help in the decision too. Because you have states with existing resources or staffing assistance is not available. Because then you could argue if it's Burlington, well, they do have the staffing, and if it came to getting political pressure, as you say, they could go, well, you have plenty of staffing in Burlington, so you don't need our assistance in this. And so on.
my point in pointing that out is just that I'm not sure if that limits what the purpose of the amendment is supposed to be, because it would be only businesses in rural areas rather than municipalities in rural areas that might be larger than 5,000. So there might be a limitation there that we want to change.
Yeah, and we discussed this limitation as well, and it doesn't quite sit right with me in terms of trying to expand the program, because then that limiting language kind of defeats the purpose in some ways. If the committee does want to broaden things, so a farm in Rutland or a farm in Burlington might be eligible for a project or something of the sort. But having that rural areas limiter in there perhaps defeats the purpose. So I was suggesting to Ready to include the community development initiatives where it does say small towns, businesses in rural areas, and within the community development initiatives to kind of expand that scope in a little bit. But then you also simultaneously lose that language. And so it's a bit of the tit for tat.
Cross purposes.
Yeah.
Belts and suspenders.
That's sort of an opposite of belt and suspenders.
Yeah, it's really tight.
We can work on language
And
and get that back to the committee. I don't know the timeframe
We're
for Ready.
We can be in the next week if that's what it takes. I'd like it sooner than that, but whatever. And again, I want to be, I don't want to be the overbearing committee that makes it hard for what you folks want to do. I do go with Senator Majors that, we want to have trust in it. We want to be helpful. That's where we want to be. And I hope that we are being helpful. I don't want to be regulatory, from a committee standpoint as far as to tell you how to do with what you're trying to do. I've got respect for the program. I didn't know much about the program until you folks came in, and I I've since I've read a lot about it. Thankful for what you do, and I am totally in agreement with expanding it into other areas as long as it doesn't hurt with what the successes that you've had in the rural areas. That's my biggest goal. So, I'm fine if you guys are fine as far as to work on some language and come back with it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Really appreciate it.
No, appreciate you. Gus is God.
In terms of timing, if I may ask.
Yeah,
Ready,
please do.
do you think you could get me language by the end of the day, or is that too much?
No problem.
Is that okay? Okay,
We
then.
will, yeah, we can definitely get you something, and
And then
I'm not sure it will be right yet.
well, yeah, and then we could maybe chat about it a little
Yeah.
bit tomorrow.
Great.
I think we might be able to come back to the committee on Friday then.
That'd be great.
Yeah.
Okay, and we sent you language on the, we sent you language, to add to this document as well, which is the, from the loggers as far as the equipment thing. I think we were fine with that language when we looked at it, but we need you to be fine with it.
Okay, sounds great. I'll look at that.
Yeah.
Put that in.
We
and
need to make sure that you're good with that. Also, we are, close to, I talked with JFO yesterday. We're close to having a fiscal note, that, with, Equine, Maggie's, working with them, giving them the list and all that stuff, so we're close. I told them that we would, like have that fiscal note, so that we could, help, finance, move that out, move that bill, part of that bill for us. I also, in some other language that's gonna come back to us, I, had a conversation with James Pepper yesterday, Cannabis Control Board. And he says that, the cannabis language is doing well on the House side. In fact, that they come up with some, proposed language to help them. I think it was what helped them, understand what they could do with the intermediate product that they had that was, what was problematic. So, that sounds pretty positive. So committee, after this bill right here, we get it to where we want to be. What else do we have left?
With this bill, we talked about unit pricing.
Yeah, yes, thank you for that. And yeah, so we want to put unit pricing in there. How did we end up? Help me with that. We ended up with unit pricing, and we get language on that.
Scott Dolan sent us,
Okay,
sort of.
you have that?
I do.
Can you send that to Bradley?
Steve,
Yeah, I remember that language now.
I have it in my email.
Yes.
I have it in my email if it's helpful to share.
Let me know. I think you have to. Great, let me know and I'll figure out how to do that.
Okay, so keep that, they will fine with the language, we're fine with that language, but you need to be fine with that language, as you, as you're good with that. Anything else that we're missing? I think so. That was, so maybe by Friday, we'd be able to have a good peek at this, vote it out. Can I call you? You good with everything so far?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Okay, ready? Anything else?
Oh.
You got everything? Yeah,
Oh, I met with Acorn Monday
yeah,
and I was pretty impressed. They didn't share a lot of stuff with us when they were in. They basically the pharmacy's food, which was pretty cool. But they've been around for since 2002, and they got over 200 something farms that work with them. And they put out this little. She didn't bring this, but it's pretty. Next time they're going to bring 2016. But I just thought I'd mention it in this little program that they have as well. That they people can shop. Now they got a minimum order of $100, but it's delivery for a week. It's pretty impressive. I was just thought I'd mention it. But that they do good things down there as well. So
okay, so I just want to impress upon the committee, if there's anything that, we're winding down. So if there's anything else that we're missing, just make sure that y'all are to us. Obviously, we're gonna have some crossover stuff that comes back through. We'll probably have some committee of conferences, maybe, more than likely. So, we're getting close. Everybody good?
Yep.
Thank you, Attorney Chauvin. I appreciate it very much.
Thank you very much.